He woke to the sound of his daughter breathing softly in the next room, and the impossible weight of a presence beside him, warm, unfamiliar, real, and when his eyes finally focused, he saw a woman standing by the window wearing his oversized shirt, the city's morning light tracing the sharp lines of her confidence. And in that frozen second he knew his quiet, stitched-together life was about to split open. If you love stories that hit you right in the chest and stay there, tap like and subscribe to Everbell's Tales now. Trust me, you'll want to be here for the end. He didn't scream, didn't move, just stared as memory rushed back in fragments the charity gala he'd only attended because the school needed donors. The spilled drink, the awkward laugh, the conversation that felt like oxygen after years underwater. He was a single dad by design and by necessity, a man who measured his days in lunchboxes and bedtime stories, who learned to love in quiet increments after his wife's passing carved a hollow in his chest. The woman turned, and recognition landed like a dropped plate. Elena Voss, the CEO everyone talked about in headlines and hushed admiration, the woman who built empires with sentences and wore power like silk. She met his gaze without flinching, as if she belonged there, as if the world made sense with her in his shirt, and him gripping the edge of the bed like a lifeline. "I know this looks wrong," she said softly, and the softness was what undid him, because it wasn't what the world expected from her, and it wasn't what he expected to need. He asked the only question that made sense, the one that wrapped his fear in logic. "How did you get here?" And she smiled, not triumphant but tired, like someone who'd run a marathon in heels. She spoke of insomnia and escape, of the way his voice last night had grounded her, of how she hadn't been Elena Voss the CEO for a few stolen hours, but just a woman who wanted to sit on a kitchen floor and laugh at nothing. He listened, stunned, while the sun climbed higher and the ordinary sounds of his life, the kettle clicking on, the hum of the fridge, refused to pause for this impossible moment. When a small voice called "Daddy" from the hallway, his heart leapt into his throat, and he watched Elena's face change, fear flickering there not for herself but for him. She stepped back, already reaching for her heels, already preparing to disappear, but he surprised himself by shaking his head. His daughter Lily peeked around the corner, her hair a riot of sleep, her eyes curious and bright. Elena crouched, lowered herself to Lily's level, and introduced herself without titles, without armor, and Lily smiled because children sense truth faster than adults ever do. The morning unfolded in fragile beats. Toast made, apologies murmured, a shared understanding that whatever this was, it mattered. When Elena finally spoke the words that froze him, it wasn't a declaration of love or a promise of rescue, it was a question delivered with gravity. "Would you let me try to be part of this world, even if it means risking mine?" He had no answer yet, only the echo of his wife's laughter in his memory, and the steady pull of a future he hadn't planned to want. And as Elena left with a look that said she'd wait but not beg, he stood in the doorway holding Lily's hand, aware that the quiet he'd once clung to had been a shelter, not a destiny. Days passed like a held breath, each one stretching and tightening as the story leaked into reality. Headlines whispering Elena's name, while his life stayed stubbornly small and precious, and he found himself arguing with the past, with the promises he'd made to stay safe, to stay small for Lily's sake. Elena didn't vanish. She sent a note written by hand, not an assistant's email, thanking him for kindness without spectacle, and asking for coffee in a place with sticky floors and honest noise. He said yes because courage sometimes looks like showing up tired and afraid. And when they sat across from each other with mugs that didn't match, she spoke not of mergers or markets, but of loneliness sharpened by success, of how power can be a room full of people where no one sees you. He spoke of grief as a quiet companion, of learning to braid hair while holding back tears, of the way love can feel like a promise you're scared to keep. They moved carefully like dancers learning a new song, setting rules that honored Lily first, that protected truth over image. And Elena surprised him again by insisting on boundaries that made space for trust. When paparazzi found them, she didn't hide him, she shielded him, took the heat, redirected the narrative with a steadiness that made him understand why people followed her lead. But the real test came not from the world but from Lily, who asked simple questions with devastating clarity. Will she still come if she's busy? Will she stay for pancakes? And Elena answered with actions, showing up in sneakers, kneeling on playground gravel, listening more than speaking. He watched his daughter bloom with the safety of consistency, and something in him loosened, a knot he hadn't known he was still carrying. The night Elena was offered an expansion that would pull her across oceans, she came to his kitchen again, this time in her own clothes, eyes honest, voice steady. "I won't ask you to wait," she said, and that restraint felt like love. He told her about fear as a habit, about the way loss teaches you to bargain with joy, and then he told her the truth that had been growing quietly between them. That choosing each other wasn't an escape, but a commitment to the work of showing up. They made a plan that sounded almost boring. Calendars shared, flights scheduled, mornings protected, Lily's needs non-negotiable. The world kept spinning, headlines flared and faded, but inside that small apartment life deepened, layered with laughter and arguments and repair. One evening as Lily slept and the city hummed below, Elena wore his shirt again, not as a surprise but as a promise renewed, and when she said, "Thank you for letting me be human here," he didn't freeze this time. He reached for her hand and felt the future settle, imperfect and real. If this story moved you, if you believe quiet courage can change everything, like the video and subscribe to Ever Bell's Tales. There are more heart-stopping stories waiting for you.